Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp Ryla, Rotary District 5810. My name's Greg Tepper. I am one of the hosts of this here podcast. The other host of the podcast is the man they call Josie, Andrew Josie Utz, who could not be here tonight. Unfortunately, Josie's not here with us. I asked him, hey, why can't you make the podcast? And he said, I'm not at liberty to say. So certainly hope it's nothing having to do with, I don't know, some sort of hostile takeover of the podcast down the road, because that would really bum me out, because I like doing the podcast with Josie. Josie, please come back. This podcast is much better with you here doing it than me flying solo. But we will press on. We will have our own episode of the podcast. Just me and you. It's just me and you, listener. We're in the room together. Radio is supposed to be the theater of the mind. And so maybe just imagine yourself, cozy on a couch with a fire crackling. Maybe you've got a hot cup of cocoa and you're settling in to listen to some nerd talk about leadership. Yeah, something like that. This is the official podcast of Camp Ryla, District 5810, Rotary District 5810. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. Coming up here in just a little bit, we've got a big-time guest. We're going to be joined by our good friend, Justin O'Keefe Higgs, who might be the most interesting person I've ever met. Certainly, he's a man of many talents. We'll talk about that with him and get his Ryla story coming up here in just a moment. But first, let's talk about a story that's been floating around the internet, because that's what this podcast is about. It's about talking about things that happened on the internet. And I want to talk about a young man. I can say young because he's younger than I am. I think he's 32. His name is Braden Wallach. Braden Wallach is his name, and look, I maybe you've seen this story, and maybe you haven't, but I'm going to get you up to speed on the ballad of Braden Wallach. You see, Braden Wallach is a 32-year-old CEO of a company. He is the 32-year-old CEO of Hypersocial, which is a marketing agency, and so he's got the corner office, right? He's running the show. He is, in the very definition of the term, a leader when it comes to this company, Hypersocial. So it was a little bit of a surprise when a couple of days ago, they came out. They're a company of 17 employees. So a small to medium size company, and he has to make the very difficult decision to lay off 2 of his employees. Now, I work with I have a little bit of management responsibilities in my big boy job, and I can tell you that I've never had to do something like that, but it sounds terrible. 0 stars, I have to imagine. Thumbs down for laying off people, especially with a company that small. I think that if it might be easier if he was, I hate to say it, but he might be easier if he was like the head of Amazon, right? Where it's just like, oh, you're just laying off people. There's kind of numbers on a spreadsheet. I think with a company that small with 17 employees, you're laying off 2 of them. I mean, that's pretty heavy. And so, he has to make that very difficult decision to lay these people off there at his company, Hypersocial. And then look, that's not an easy thing to do, and I don't want to be tone deaf to what he was going through, because certainly that's pretty tough. It's pretty tough for everybody involved. But the reason he's in the news, and the reason you're hearing about it right now, or perhaps you heard about it before I started talking about it, is because of what he posted on social media. You see, Braden Wallach decided to go out there and post a statement on LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn. If for all the young people in the audience, LinkedIn is like it's like career Facebook. Basically you put your resume up there. It's a way to apply for jobs, things like that. It's a social media platform for olds, is basically what it is, and for people who are looking for jobs. And so Braden Wallach decides to go on his LinkedIn, and he wanted to say about the tough day that his company had, about going and laying off 2 of his employees. And with the statement that he made, he decided to put out a selfie. And the selfie that he took is of him with tears streaking down his face. Braden Wallach posted a crying selfie of himself after laying off 2 of his employees at his small company. And this has been roundly roasted on the internet. And not rightfully so, but understandably so, because this is the internet, and the internet is vicious. And basically they grabbed hold of it and memed him and turned him into some sort of symbol that he wasn't necessarily going for. And really, I think that what he was going for, and I'm going to give this the most generous reading of the situation. The most generous reading is that he was going for something about emotional transparency. I think he wanted to say how much that this impacted him, how tough it was for him as a guy who was the head of the company, as a leader, as tough as it was for him. I think the intent was to show vulnerability, and I think it was maybe even to show remorse and just show, this sucks, but it had to be done. Like, I hate that this had to happen, but this had to happen. This is an important part of, unfortunately, the life cycle of our company. And that's what he was going for. But I can't help but think, and I don't think I'm alone in this, I can't help but think that while I think vulnerability as a leader is an important aspect, and I think that it's good to be vulnerable to people that are in your group, I can't help but feel like that was pretty self-serving. And I guess my question is with a situation like that, being vulnerable and being, transparent, emotionally transparent to your employees or to the people you're leading can be a good thing. But ask yourself, and I would encourage Mr. Wallach to do this, ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you doing it because you genuinely want to show that emotional transparency? You genuinely want to be authentic? You want to say, hey, listen, this is what I want you to think, I want you to know that this was very tough. Or are you showing emotional transparency, essentially to kind of brand yourself? You know what I mean? To essentially like turn it into self-aggrandizing online content. Is that what you're going for? And that to me is two very different things. I think, look, I've as I mentioned, I have some leadership responsibilities in my job, and I think I've been pretty emotionally transparent with my colleagues. We're a small company, and so I think they know a lot about me. And I don't mind being emotionally transparent. I don't mind, showing a little bit of that vulnerability, but it has to be authentic. It has to be real. And I think that the reason that Braden Wallach is catching all sorts of flack is because it doesn't feel real. It feels like, look at me, look how hard this job as CEO is. Because in a lot of ways, being a leader is a choice. It can be a choice, especially in the professional world. Being a leader is a choice, but being laid off is not. And so I think the idea of look how hard this was for me kind of overshadows the look how hard this was for the two people who just lost their jobs. And I think that maybe it struck the wrong chord. If you wanted to, I think, for example, and we're just spitballing here, Mr. Wallach, I know you're listening. I think it would have served a better purpose if you would have shown a photo maybe of the past of him with the two employees that he had to lay off, and maybe something about how difficult it is to lose friends like that, to lose colleagues like that. I think that would have resonated a little bit better, in that it was making it more about them, the actual, I don't want to use the word victim, that's pretty harsh, but the actual kind of people on the business end of this business decision. That might have been a little bit better. And so look, I think that authenticity can go a long way. I think authenticity can be a really positive thing, and especially if you're trying to show empathy, if you're trying to be vulnerable, if you're trying to be emotionally transparent, I think that can be a good thing. But I think that what really matters here is intent. What really matters, because I think people are going to be able to sniff that out. And so why are you doing that? Are you doing that out of genuine empathy? Are you doing that out of genuine feeling for the people around you? Or are you doing it for yourself, for some self-aggrandizing reasons, some online content, so to speak? Anyway, I read that and I thought that was interesting. Don't you think, Josie? Josie? Yeah, he's not here, but I miss him. All right, enough of me babbling on. We've got a big-time guest here on this week's RYLACast. We're going to be joined by Justin O'Keefe Higgs, coming up here after the break on the RYLACast. think people know my story with Ryla is that I took some time away before coming back to Ryla, and so one of the nice benefits of that is that I kind of get to add to my Ryla family every time I get back involved, because it's like there's more people coming, and one of those guys is a gentleman that I met at camp for the first time this past summer, and I'm convinced he's among the most interesting people I've ever met. We're pleased to be joined on the RYLACast this week by Justin O'Keefe Higgs. Justin, what is up, my man?
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for taking some time with us. I asked you this in the before we started recording, but let's just pretend that I didn't. Where are you these days? Because your Instagram says that you're all over the place.
Yeah, I live in Fort Worth, but I travel pretty regularly up to New York and probably going over to LA and a few other places soon.
Okay, so let's start with this, because I think this is a much more interesting question than it would be for a lot of people. But what is it exactly that you do?
The $1 million question with me. Gosh. So when people ask me that, I always tell them the typical attorney response, it depends. So to lead off, I am a Texas licensed attorney, also hold my master's in human resource development, and I have served as HR director, HR business partner, HR consultant. And then I am also an award-winning and published artist, photographer, stylist, designer, body painter, costume fabricator. Whatever I want to do, I will figure it out and teach myself how to do it.
I don't want to tell you how to run your career, but I would get business cards that just say Renaissance man.
Yeah, definitely that.
It feels like you do a little bit of everything. So I want to start kind of at the beginning, with your Ryla journey. We kind of ask this question for everybody we have on. Can you tell us a little bit about your Ryla story and how you came to be involved with the program?
Gosh, yeah. So back in 2002, I went to a small Christian school called Metropolitan Christian School that was in Pleasant Grove in Dallas. So I was selected by the Pleasant Grove Rotary Club to attend RYLA. And coming from a very small school where you're talking my high school, we probably had 60 kids there. My class, we had a class of 11. So me going to RYLA was very big because my mom wanted to make sure that we were safe and we grew up in a very, I would say, sheltered environment. So me going to RYLA was actually the first time I was away from home. I had never been away from home before without being with my mom or family. So it was a very interesting experience for me. So that was the last year we were up at Bridgeport. So got driven up to Bridgeport, terrified. I mean, terrified. And I remember pulling up and I see these crazy people just screaming and yelling and jumping. I'm like, what is happening? I have no idea what's going on. And I got pulled out of the car and the rest is history, man.
Yeah. That's I feel like everybody could tell their story in that way. Like everybody has interesting like intros, and then it's like, and then it happened.
Yeah.
One thing I'm interested in, like when you got there and you were going through camp, was it a situation where did the Ryla magic click immediately? Did it click while you were there? Because we hear from people all the time. It's like, it wasn't until I got home that it really like all settled in. For you, when did it all kind of click in for you?
I'll definitely say it happened at camp.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, that we always say at Ryla, step out of your comfort zone. From day one, they were constantly telling me that. And then I realized, you know what? I actually have something to contribute here. Like, we're all different. I remember all the guys in my cabin. I was like, how am I paired with these people? Like, we have nothing really in common. And then to see, 5-6 days later, how close we are. And even, 20 years later, I still talk to a lot of my cabin mates. So I would say definitely it happened at camp because I got to see the change not only in myself, but also in the other campers that were there.
You are you go on from camp and you pursue the law degree. It's obvious, you got your JD from Texas Southern. I'm really interested in that path, that is a really, nobody is just like, I think I'll go to law school. That seems fun.
Yeah.
When did you know that that was what you wanted to pursue? And was that just a pathway, a natural pathway to body painting?
I will say I definitely knew I wanted to be an attorney back in, I would say, sixth grade.
Mm.
So I knew I wanted to help people, but I did not know how. I felt there was a need for people like me in the field, especially being a Black man in the South. And
Mhm.
if you don't know, one of the statistics actually came out the other day. Of all the attorneys in the United States, only 4% are Black.
Oh,
So
wow.
I did not realize that, I'm a part of this almost elite club of 4%. And then if you look at the other side of it for me, where it goes into the body painting and the artist, only 1% of our artists who are in a art gallery or shown in an art gallery are Black. And I'm a
Mm.
part of that also. So it's something that I always knew I wanted to help people, not only to tell my story, but to help tell their story also, because not always do people have the skill set or the knowledge, or also just someone just to speak for them. So I wanted to be that voice for all those people.
So I'm interested in your we'll start with the law part of it first. I'm
Yeah,
interested in how you use the stuff that you took at camp and took from the RYLA program, and how you use that in your career in law.
gotcha. Well, first of all, it taught me to even go to law school.
Mm.
After I graduated, I went to college in East Texas. So I was still in a very small, homogenous community. And when I got into law school at Texas Southern, it's in Houston, which is now the most diverse city in the nation and the fourth largest city in the nation. So I'm going from Tyler, Texas, where you have like a handful, like a few thousand people, 50,000 people plus, to millions of people. I was terrified yet again. But going through RYLA taught me yet again, step out of your comfort zone, because you need to see what you're made of. You actually can do these things if you just trust yourself and stop being comfortable. So I went to law school. It was tough. I will say that. I tell people this to this day. If you are not passionate about the law, don't do it,
Mm.
because it is an experience that only people who've gone to law school can really share in. So after doing that, graduating, studying for the bar for 3 months, not talking to anyone, literally 24/7 studying, took my 3-day test and ended up passing the first time. And then I started working. So then when I got into my career, same thing, step out of your comfort zone, Justin. So I'm taking different jobs, different places. What type of law do I want to practice? What type of things do I want to do? What type of people do I want to help? And then also, how do I even pay my bills? Because some of the great stuff that you want to do representing these people pro bono, things like that, but I still have to make sure that I can eat and pay back these student loans. So it's a big balancing act trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do, and also what is the legacy you want to leave and the mission that you're on.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and certainly like a lesson in, I don't want to say like doing things for the reason that is actually important, because I can imagine, like the thing you said about don't go to law school if you're not interested, if you're not super into the law. I can also see, and I don't want, this is not legal advice, I'm not a lawyer. I could also see people who are like, man, being a lawyer, that sounds cool. Like the title and like the thing. But it's like, it strikes me that like, if you're not into it, and especially you're not into it for the right reason, you could burn out real quickly and be like, well, this is a lot of work for something that I was just doing for what could be a nice paycheck and a cool title and invites to fancy parties. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if that kind of, identifying the reasoning behind you're doing it, especially in a field like yours, is extra important, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And let me say this. Going to law school was like going to RYLA. So you are going to be put around the best of the best. And you have to figure out who you are amongst the people who are literally at the top of their game. So that was tough because you had to realize, oh, well, I'm not really good at this, but somebody else over here is amazing at that. But this is my strong suit. This is what I'm good at. Because one thing about Texas Southern at Thurgood, which is our law school's name, everything is graded on a curve. So suppose if, everyone in the class makes between 190 on a test, which rarely happens. But if somebody was to do that in law school, there can only be so many A's. There can only be so many B's, C's, D's, and F's. So they have to do it based on that curve. So if everybody's good, then, that 1 point is the difference between you passing and failing a class. So it was super tough because everything was very competitive. So I had to learn how to survive. And one of the things they told us straight up from the first day in law school, a lot of our professors were that look to your right, look to your left. By the end of this year, half of those people will not be back. And you're just like, oh, wow, okay. And then the next piece was the people, the way that they act during law school will be the type of attorney that they are when they practice. So watch out and see what people do here, because when they get into the legal field, they will do the exact same thing. So to be candid, I saw people study with people and give them the wrong outlines. So they'd have wrong information. I'm telling you, I saw crazy stuff that people would do to get ahead of someone. I had a hard time there because I try to be a good person. I'm very big about treat people the way that you want to be treated, respect. I literally have core values for myself and my business: loyalty, honor, respect, honesty, and humility. That's how I run my life and my business. If you can't do that, honestly, we can't be friends and we cannot do business together. So I had to decide, what type of person do I want to be in my career? Because I could do all of these things to get ahead right now and get that extra boost, but is it worth it to who I am and to my character? And I said no. So I took a lot of hits in law school, but I got through it because I knew that sacrificing the grades, this, then the third right now, I still had the knowledge, because at the end of the day, you pass the bar, I'm still an attorney. I'm still licensed. So I had to make sure to learn how to play the game. And that was the same thing we had to do at RYLA. You had to figure out who's good at what. You had to figure out how to play the game. You had to figure out who should step up at this moment and when should you be quiet and just sit back and listen. And then also, what are you going to do when you need to step up, but there's a shortcut available? Do you do the quick thing or do you do the right thing?
I think that's awesome. I think that's really inspiring, especially, just having, a man's got to have a code, so to speak, as somebody once said. All right. Now, I'm also interested because you and I share something with our RYLA journeys, which is that we took some time off before returning to camp. This past year, 2022, that was your first time back at camp since
2004. So actually, you and I actually met before. You just didn't remember me. That's why when I introduced myself at camp this year, you're like, who is this random dude talking to me?
Yeah. Because here's the thing. If we're just going to, because I remember your sister.
Yeah. And I was an ACA the year my sister was a camper. No, take that back. I was an AC that year. I was assigned to a cabin that year. So I was an AC when my sister was a camper, because Amber's a year behind me. Yep.
Right. Okay. So this was your first time back at camp since 2004.
Yeah.
I am interested in your 2022 camp experience because I want to see how much it mirrors my experience when I came back to camp.
I will say it was one of the greatest honors of my life to come back to camp this year. And I am so glad that Paul and Katie reached out to me. I woke up one morning, it was essentially 2 or 3 weeks before camp started. And I got 2 messages from Katie Huber and from Paul Murray. And they said, hey, how are you? And I was like, uh-oh, if Paul and Katie are both reaching out to me, RYLA's going on. And I was like, okay, hi, how are you? They're like, oh, hey, we wanted to see if you would be interested in stepping in and stepping up and coming back to camp this year as a counselor. Funny thing is that I had been contemplating it for a couple of years. Every time I would look at the website, fill out the app, get ready to fill out the application, always talk myself out of it. I'm too busy. I don't have time to do this. I have two French bulldogs. Who's going to watch G and Jackson? I always made an excuse. And they both said, no, we think you need to come back. Your name's been brought up multiple times. I think it's time for you to come back to camp. So I sat down literally at the desk I'm at right now, and I said, let me think about it and see what I can figure out. And I told them, if I can get someone to dog sit, I'll come. So I reached out to a friend. Hey, can you watch the pups? He was like, of course, yeah. And I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm going to camp. Like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I told him I would come. I got to work. I had 2 weeks to essentially do stuff that everyone had the entire year ahead of time to do. Put together, designing a cabin, the theme, meeting my AC, figuring out who my campers were, getting everything on board. But like I said, I am glad that I did it. It was time for me to come back to camp. And it forced me out of my comfort zone. Yet again, here's the same thing. I had to stop being comfortable and take a chance. And I will say I'm glad I came back now and I did not do it, I would say maybe 5 or 10 years ago, because I feel like I was able to contribute so much more because I've gone through so much more. I have so much more wisdom and I understand how to step back, let people develop and then help them develop. I don't need to do the thing. Like I told my camper straight up, cabin 2, this is not my camper year, because they would ask me questions. I was like, I'm not a camper. This is your year. You need to figure it out. And at first they were a little offended. And then they once everything kind of clicked for them, they were like, wow, no, he's right. This is about us. We need to figure out how to do things. And I told my AC, Matt, I'm the coach, you're the team captain, and this is our team. I will coach and step in when I need to, but I'm going to let you guys figure it out. And if you can, I'll give you hints, but I'm not going to do it. But to watch that change throughout the week and then see all of these different skill sets and then to watch them fail, that was the best experience, because I remember all of those experiences and those feelings and the frustration of like, why can't we figure this out? And then you've got all these cooks in the kitchen, all these chefs trying to throw in their recipe and their skill set, and they still can't do it until they just take a moment to step back and just realize, slow down, and then let's all work together instead of everyone trying to be the leader. So yeah, me coming back now, it was the right time because I was able to give back to RYLA in a substantial way where I feel like it has impacted the lives of others in a greater fashion.
That is, I'm so glad you said that, because that's really similar to mine, and the idea of like, I'm glad I came back when I did, because that was one thing I kind of battled with, was like, when I came back, it was like, I can either dwell on all the time that I missed, or I can find the positives in it. And I do think that, yeah, I'm much more valuable to camp as I am now than I would have been maybe 10 years ago. And maybe that's not true. Maybe time would have, it would have accumulated more value, but like, I know I have to believe that I'm as valuable as I've ever been to camp now because of what I've been through. So that same thing, like you said, that I'm just sitting here nodding like, I feel like exact same thing.
And then I will also say too, one of the reasons why I left camp was because I told them back in 2004, when I came back as a staff member, is that I felt like I did not have a place. And it was hard for me, especially as someone who had their life always laid out for them, in front of them, planned for so many years. So that was the beginning of me trying to figure out, who am I? So I want to make sure all the campers, all the alum listening to this, it's okay to feel like you don't have a place right now. That doesn't mean that down the line you won't. So you probably need to go through something. You need to have some type of experience. You need to learn something so that when if you do step away, it's okay. You're still a part of the family. So when you come back, it's so much greater. So I'm glad that I did it because, like I said, me coming back at this time, I felt like it was right.
Okay, let's get to the main event. Let's talk about the body painting. Your Instagram is one of the most interesting things, and like my wife has caught me like flipping through your Instagram before, and her reaction like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
like there's just a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you get into it? And like,
Oh,
like, I want to know everything basically about this part of your life because it is fascinating to me.
alrighty. So I will say the time early on. So let me take it back. Law school, super stressful. How do I balance it out? I was into photography, so I will remember this. I remember this moment exactly. November of 2000 and through no, take that back, 7. I walked into Best Buy in Houston and I bought my first DSLR camera, a Canon Rebel, because I was like, I'm just gonna learn how to take pictures. So everything that you see on my Instagram, I'm all self-taught. I just figured it out. So
Wow.
I did a study abroad that year after my first year of law school. We went to London. So I lived in London for 3 months, and then every weekend we went to a different country. So I took my camera all through Europe and just took pictures. Like I fell in love with it, learned how to use it, like had an amazing time. Had some of my work published in the American Bar Association Student Journal. So I had my photography published then for my trip. So I would say started to practice law, really got really heavily focused in my career and not really focusing on my creative side to the point of where it burnt me out. I did not realize how evenly right and left brained I was, and they complement each other. Most people are either one or the other. I am a mixture of both, and I have to have each working for me to be in balance. So, for the longest time, I went through I would say, a dark time in my life dealing with anxiety, depression, and I will say my French bulldogs and also my art is what brought me to the other side. And my art was my way of telling my story without being interrupted, without being told that I was wrong, and not being told I needed to shut up and stay in my place. It was my chance to speak unapologetically and to fully be myself without any reservations. So, back in we're talking 2017, after that dark period, one of my good friends, she reached out to me, Jensina, and she said, your photography is nice, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, keep going. You need to try new stuff, but you're not doing what you should be doing. And I was like, yeah, I'm right. I'm frustrated because my work looks like everyone else's. And it's just like, I don't want to be taking family photos and all this stuff. Like there's amazing people who do that type of stuff. But I knew that was not my calling. So I was getting frustrated with myself because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And to the point of where I got so frustrated, one day 3 months later, I walked into Michael's, bought some paint, and just literally start throwing paint on people. And then there's a couple things I need to add with that. After I start throwing paint on people, essentially, and taking
with consent, we should be clear.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
you're not just walking up to dudes on the street and you're just like, "Hey, man, splash."
I was so scared for 10 years. I was a natural light photographer, so I did not do studio lighting at all. I thought it was super complicated. I could not figure it out. I did not want to go near it. So I mastered shadows, this, that, and the third. I knew exactly how to do everything natural light. One day, yet again, stepped out of my comfort zone. I rented a photo studio in Richardson, and I fell in love with studio photography. And the work that I did, people were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. How long have you been doing this? And I was like, this was my first shoot. And they were like, no way. I was like, yeah. So I started looking for my own equipment because I was like, all right, I need to start doing this. So at that time, super broke, just out of law school type of young attorney. I was like, I can't afford $300 per strobe light. Like I need multiple, I can't tripods and backgrounds. I can't do any of this stuff. And I want everyone who's listening right now, I want you to really pay attention to this piece of the story, because this is what confirmed exactly for me, I was on the right path and doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I was at work practicing law on a Saturday. We had a deadline, so I had to go into the office downtown Dallas. And I was, as many people do, on my phone while I'm working, and I'm searching because I became obsessed. I was like, I have got to find this photography equipment. Made a mistake and spelled photography or equipment. I spelled one of the words wrong, and it actually hit on a post on Facebook Marketplace. And I was like, what is this? These two random gray totes, and it says photography equipment, which was spelled wrong, $100. And I was like, no way. So I messaged the lady and I was like, hey, I'm interested in this, but do you know if there's any strobe lights in there? And she was like, I have no idea what those are. I said, okay, cool. Would you mind opening up the totes, pulling over what's out, and taking a couple pictures of the stuff for me? And she was like, sure. She opens up the tote, sends me the photos. There are 6 Alien B strobe lights in there. Oh my God. So I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So I tell you, the people in my office that Saturday, I packed up my stuff. I said, I got to go. And they were like, are you okay? Is there an emergency? Somebody in an accident? I was like, I got to go. I'll see you Monday. I got to go. This is one of those opportunities. If I miss it, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I will never forgive myself. And they were like, okay. I get into my truck. This lady is like in Watauga. So she's north of Fort Worth, and I'm on the road. I'm going 90 miles an hour in my truck. My heart is beating through my chest. I finally get there about 45 minutes later. I'm out of breath, and I'm like, I'm here. And she's like, calm down, breathe. I want you to know that as soon as you told me you were coming, I marked it as sold. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because as you know, on Craigslist or anything, or any of these resale apps, if it's like first come, first serve, so they'll have like 20 people coming from one item. And I've had stuff bought from underneath me. And I was like, I can't have this happen. So the lady tells me this. She goes, I want you to understand what I'm doing and why. She says, my dad passed away in 2014. He was a traveling photographer. So he used to take pictures at the Shriners Club, at daycares, this, that, and the third. I've had his equipment for a couple of years. I have not had I wasn't ready to get rid of it. But she says, I finally posted it, and I knew that the person who was supposed to have this equipment is supposed to do something amazing and change this world with it. You're that person.
Mm.
So this is $5,000 worth of photo equipment I'm giving you for $100 because I want to help start your career, and I know that you're going to do amazing things.
Wow.
To the point of where I'm like there crying because I was like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? She goes, you're supposed to do something great. A few months later, I start painting people, taking pictures. 10 years, I go back. I was telling you guys about earlier, I did not compete at the State Fair, Texas. The State Fair, Texas for photography, if you do not win, they send you a nice letter or email saying, come pick up your work. It will not be displayed. We only show winners. So I was intimidated. I was not ready. So I entered 9 pieces in 2017. Got a letter back, and I see everything listed. I was like, yep, I failed. Except for one piece was missing. I was like, that's odd. Not only did I win first place, I won best of show of every photographer, professional photographer, and every person who teaches photography in the state of Texas. My first time competing and the first piece of body art that I did. The next year, I won 2 first places and best of show again. And then last year in 2021, I won first place again. And I just dropped my pieces off last week for this year's show.
Dynasty. That's incredible. That's amazing. Because I'll be honest, like that story of like, you know, it's like photography equipment, $100, and you're like, oh man, there's $5,000. My initial thought was like, oh, this is somebody who just doesn't know what they have. Like they just don't know what they have. But
exactly.
It's very clear she knew exactly what she had, and she had a plan for it.
Yes.
So that's pretty amazing. Well,
I use the equipment to this day.
That's amazing. Well, I certainly recommend everybody. Wait, what's your Instagram? Tell me your Instagram again.
Justin O'Keefe Creative.
Okay, you need to follow that, and your wife might look at you weird and be like, "Why are you looking at people painted?" And I'm like, "Trust me, it's art." Okay, Justin O'Keefe Higgs. One last question for you. We give you the floor if there's something you want to plug, something you want people to know about. Something you are passionate about right now and you want more people to know about it. The floor is yours.
Wow. What a question. Okay.
No pressure.
So I am a really interesting person who takes life. I live life from the experiences. I want to know what this world has to offer. So I will definitely say tell people to follow my social media. It's not for everyone because I live life in a different fashion where I will create things and tell my story. I am a
Mm-hmm.
visual storyteller. So within the 2 weeks, I'm actually heading back to New York to create some art, and then going over to Jersey for Labor Day. The pups and I are here in Fort Worth until next summer. I was actually contemplating getting another degree, going to Harvard next year. But then a very wise lady spoke to me and said, "You need to start following your passion and stop living your life for other people and doing the things that they want you to do."
Mm-hmm.
So I am yet again, Ryla, this summer changed me in a way where I feel like I am finally ready. And the pups and I will be moving up to New York City June of 2023. So looking to serve as a counselor again next summer. And then as soon as camp is over, we will pack up and then we will be out leaving Texas. So I've had an amazing time here. I grew up here, Mav Maniac. I've danced, I've taught Zumba, body pump. I've done all these crazy things, but it's time for me to step into the next phase and chapter of my life where I want to work with, these amazing fashion houses, designers, cologne brands, everything, and get to tell my story and get paid good money to do it. So that's what's happening with me.
That's pretty remarkable. I will second his following him on social media. It is very, very, it is absolutely worth it. It is the most interesting account that I follow on Instagram. Justin O'Keefe Higgs, my man, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks once again to Justin O'Keefe Higgs for being our guest on this episode of the RYLACast. Well, Josie's not here to do the second segment, so I guess I'll just do this segment too. And I want to talk a little bit about anger. And that's going to be a little bit strange, I know, but I had a situation rise up at work this week that I'd like to talk through a little bit, and this is my podcast, I guess, for this week, so I guess you can't really stop me. This is, so there was a situation this week that essentially, I won't get into the details, but somebody that I work with closely, they said something to me, and it made me really angry. It made me really, really angry. And obviously this is somebody that I have to work with. I have to work pretty closely with. But I kept feeling this. She said something to me and it made me incandescently angry. I mean, furious. It's been a long time since I was really that angry. And in a leadership position, even with just colleagues, right? Even with people who are your equal, you have to get along with these people, and it's important to maintain those types of good leadership skills in a situation like that. And so I really tried to sit down and I tried to process exactly why I was feeling so angry. And I think one thing that I've thought about recently, especially with regards to the way that it works with leadership, and because I think anger doesn't go a long way in leadership. I think that is a negative emotion, all told, and it's not going to help you get where you need to go or accomplish the things that you do. But I think it's also easy. I think people see that at camp, people see that in all of our situations. Anger is going to rise up. It's going to be something that you experience, but it's not productive. And so I think it's really important, I found, to quickly diagnose where the anger is coming from and why you're so angry and how you can move past it. And I read something this week that I think is really important, and it was essentially that anger is not a primary emotion. Anger is not something that you feel right out of the gate. Anger is a secondary emotion. It's something that you feel after you feel something else. You feel something else, and then you feel the anger as a result of that. Maybe you're angry because you're scared. Maybe you're angry because you're lonely. Maybe you're angry because you are, sad. Something like that, right? There's a primary emotion attached to it, and the secondary emotion that comes from it is anger. Nobody just gets to anger right away. And so, in my particular story, what I started realizing was that the thing that my colleague told me, it hurt me. It ultimately made me feel bad. It hurt me. And so my anger was not that I was angry at her. My anger was that I was hurt by her. I felt hurt by her comment. And so I discussed that with her, and we've come to a resolution. But I think it was important for me to process those feelings before we were able to enter into some sort of conflict resolution. You can't go in all hot, you know what I mean? You can't go in there feeling that way and ultimately expect any sort of positive outcome. But that was one thing that I really thought about this week, was about how anger is a secondary emotion. It's not something that you jump to right away. It's something that you have to get to via another emotion. And so the next time you're in a situation, I would encourage you, next time you're in a situation where you've got anger rising up, I would encourage you to step back and kind of ask the question, well, why am I angry? Don't just say, I'm angry because I'm angry. I'm angry because this happened. What is it about that thing that happened that gave you the primary emotion that led to that anger? And I think that's going to be a way for that, at least for me, helps me to negotiate emotional pathways in a way that can ultimately lead to more productive conversations. So that's just me, though. And what do I know? Okay, we did it. Look at that. Solo podcast here on the RYLACast. Josie, we miss you desperately. Please come back next time. Our thanks once again to Justin O'Keefe Higgs for being our guest here on the RYLACast. Please tell your friends about this. Rate, subscribe, do the thing. I'm supposed to give you some sort of antiquated way to tell people about the RYLACast. What I would do is buy an advertisement in a newspaper that is, or some sort of print media that is sadly antiquated. So please do it, though. Buy an advertisement and say, hey, listen to the RYLACast on the podcast vendor of your choice. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks again to Justin O'Keefe Higgs for being our guest, and we will see you next time, hopefully with Josie, running 2 wide here on the RYLACast.